Captain James Holt wiped the sweat from his brow as he maneuvered his rugged mining craft, the Orion, closer to the surface of the asteroid. The cockpit was cramped, filled with the hum of the engine and the faint beeping of the mineral scanner. James's focus was absolute, his eyes scanning the rocky terrain for valuable minerals. "Anything yet, Ricks?" James called out over the comm. Lieutenant Eric Ricks, his second-in-command and longtime friend, responded from the back of the ship, where he was monitoring the equipment. "Still scanning, Cap. This rock might be a dud." James grunted in response, steering the ship to a new location on the asteroid's surface. The Orion's lights cast eerie shadows on the rocks. It was during this maneuver that a weak signal pinged on the scanner, an anomaly. "Wait a sec," Ricks said, his voice laced with intrigue. "You might want to see this, James. We've got a biosignature. It's faint, but it's there." "A biosignature? Out here?" James's skepticism was evident in his voice as he anchored the ship and unstrapped himself. "Show me." Together, they huddled over the scanner. The screen displayed a faint outline of a life form, an irregular blip that stood out against the void of space. "It could be a glitch," Rick suggested, scratching his chin. "Or it could be something else," James countered, the possibility igniting a spark of curiosity in his seasoned eyes. "Prepare the rover. We're going down." The descent to the asteroid was quick, the ship's small rover bouncing along the uneven surface. James drove while Ricks kept his eyes on the scanner, directing him towards the signal. "There," Ricks pointed to a shallow crater ahead of them. "The signal's strongest from that point." As they approached, the headlights of the rover illuminated a startling scene. Lying amidst the rocks was an alien girl, her skin pale and translucent, with faint bioluminescent lines tracing intricate patterns across her body. She was barely conscious, her chest rising and falling weakly. "Holy hell," James muttered, his eyes wide with shock. He quickly jumped out of the rover, his boots kicking up dust as he rushed to her side. Gently, he checked her for injuries. "She's alive, but barely," James called back to Ricks, who had followed him out. "Help me get her to the rover. We need to get her back to the Orion fast." Together, they lifted her carefully, noticing how frail she felt. Her eyelids fluttered, revealing bright, fearful eyes that watched them warily. "Hey, it's okay. We're not going to hurt you," James reassured her softly as they settled her into the rover. He couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was about to change everything. As they drove back to the ship, Ricks looked at James, his expression serious. "What are you thinking, James? You know the protocols. Unknown alien life forms." "I know the protocols, Ricks," James interrupted, his jaw set firmly. "But look at her. She's just a kid. We can't just leave her here to die. We're taking her back, and we'll figure it out from there." Ricks nodded, understanding his captain's resolve. "All right, let's get her safe then." Back aboard the Orion, as they prepared for liftoff, the alien girl regained consciousness. Her voice was weak, but they heard her speak in their minds, a clear, resonant thought that left them stunned. "Thank you," she thought, her eyes locking with James's. "My name is Meera." James nodded, offering her a small smile. "Welcome aboard, Meera. Let's get you somewhere safe." As the Orion pulled away from the asteroid, James felt the weight of their actions. They were in uncharted territory now, both literally and metaphorically. Whatever came next, it was clear that their lives had taken a dramatic turn with the rescue of this mysterious alien girl. The atmosphere aboard the Orion was tense as James guided the ship away from the asteroid. Meera lay in a makeshift bed in the infirmary, her condition stable, but still fragile. James had ordered Ricks to maintain a close watch on her vitals while he piloted the ship. "Her biometrics are like nothing I've seen before," Ricks commented, examining the readings on his scanner. "She's stabilizing, but slowly. Whatever she is, she's not used to our atmosphere or gravity." James nodded, his thoughts racing. "Keep her on oxygen, and let's limit our questions until she's stronger. The last thing we need is to stress her further." Meera's presence on the ship raised a multitude of questions, none of which had easy answers. As James set the ship's course back toward the nearest space station, he contacted his superior, Commander Helen Voss, to report their discovery. "Voss, we've got a situation," James began once the secure line was established. "We found an alien life form, a girl, barely alive. We've brought her aboard." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Voss responded. Her voice was cautious. "You did what, Captain?" "You know the protocol about unknown entities. This could be a serious breach." "I'm aware of the protocols," James replied, his voice firm. but leaving her there to die wasn't an option. We need to figure out what to do with her. She's just a child, Helen. Commander Voss sighed, the sound crackling over the line. All right, James. Bring her in, but keep her isolated. We'll have to quarantine and examine her immediately upon your arrival. I'll prepare the medical team. Understood, James confirmed, cutting the connection. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The decision weighed heavily on him, but he couldn't have chosen differently. Back in the infirmary, Meera slowly opened her eyes, taking in her surroundings with a wary curiosity. Rix offered her a gentle smile, trying to make her feel at ease. You're safe here, Meera, he reassured her. Can you tell us anything about what happened to you? How did you end up on that asteroid? Meera looked at him, her eyes reflecting a depth of intelligence and sorrow. I was exiled. She projected her thoughts clearly, her voice in their minds soft yet haunting. My people. They feared me because I was different. They left me there to die. Rix exchanged a glance with James, who had just entered the room. The implications of her words were troubling. We won't let anything happen to you, James promised, kneeling beside her bed. We'll figure this out together, okay? Meera nodded, a flicker of relief passing through her eyes. Over the next few hours, as the Orion sped towards the space station, James and Rix took turns sitting with her, piecing together her story. She explained that she came from a civilization where conformity was law, and her abilities made her an outcast. Her own family had turned against her, complying with the ruler's orders to abandon her in space. As the Orion docked at the station, James prepared to face the consequences of his actions. He knew that saving Meera was just the beginning of a much larger challenge. With every government and scientific body in human space potentially interested in Meera, he had to tread carefully to protect her from becoming a specimen or a tool in political games. Stay close to us, Meera, James instructed as they prepared to disembark. Trust me, we'll get through this. Together, they stepped off the Orion, ready to face whatever awaited them at the space station. James was determined to keep Meera safe, no matter the cost. The metallic corridors of the space station buzzed with activity, but the arrival of Captain James Holt, Lieutenant Eric Rix, and their alien ward, Meera, brought a palpable tension. As they made their way to the quarantine sector, station personnel and other inhabitants cast curious and sometimes wary glances at the small group. Commander Helen Voss met them at the entrance of the quarantine facility, her expression a mixture of concern and resolve. We need to move quickly and discreetly, she instructed, leading the way to a secure area designed for biological containment. James nodded, glancing at Meera, who clung closely to his side, her fear evident. We'll do everything we can to keep this low-key, Helen. She's scared enough as it is. Inside the quarantine room, medical staff dressed in protective suits waited. Voss turned to James and Rix. I've briefed them thoroughly. They're to conduct a full medical scan and determine if there's any threat to station security or health. James, Rix, you'll need to stay outside during the examination. Meera's eyes widened, and her grip tightened on James's arm. Through their mental connection, she pleaded, Please, don't leave me alone with them. James squeezed her hand reassuringly. It's okay, Meera. We'll be right outside. Just a standard checkup. Reluctantly, Meera let go of James and followed a nurse into the examination room. The door closed with a soft hiss, and James and Rix took their positions outside, watching through the observation window. As the medical team began their scans, Commander Voss briefed them on the political ramifications. This situation could draw a lot of unwanted attention, James. Not just from our own government, but from other species on the station. Word has already begun to spread. James frowned, watching Meera through the glass. We just wanted to save her life, Helen. And you did, Voss acknowledged. But now we need to manage the fallout. We have to ensure she doesn't become a diplomatic incident. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by an alert on the station's communication channel. Voss answered the call, her face hardening as she listened. Understood, she said tersely before turning to James and Rix. We have a problem. A ship registered to Meera's home planet just docked. They're demanding to take her back. They're claiming she's a fugitive. James's hands clenched into fists. We can't let them take her, Helen. She's been through enough already. Voss nodded grimly. Agreed. I'll handle the diplomatic side. For now, keep her out of sight. We may need to move her. As the medical examination concluded, Meera emerged, her face pale but composed. James and Rix quickly escorted her away from the quarantine area, heading toward a more secluded part of the station. They had just rounded a corner when a group of alien delegates from Meera's planet approached, flanked by station security. The lead delegate, a tall, imposing figure with shimmering skin, spoke first. "We are here for the fugitive. Hand her over." James stepped in front of Meera, blocking her from their view. "She's under our protection," he stated firmly. The situation escalated quickly, with heated words exchanged and station security struggling to maintain a buffer between the two groups. Amid the confrontation, Rix leaned close to James. "We need a plan, and fast." James nodded, his mind racing for solutions. "We make for the docking bay. There's a cargo ship leaving for the outer colonies in 20 minutes. We can stow away." Navigating through the back corridors and service tunnels of the station, they made their stealthy retreat. Meera stayed close, her trust in James and Rix her only reassurance in the chaos. As they reached the docking bay, the cargo ship's ramp was already closing. James called out to the pilot, waving a hastily prepared bribe. "Wait! We need passage!" The ramp lowered again, and the three hurried aboard, just as station security realized their escape route. The ship's engines roared to life, and they were soon hurtling away from the station, leaving behind the immediate threat, but flying into uncertainty. "We're safe, for now," James assured Meera, who looked out at the stars with a mix of wonder and apprehension. "We'll figure this out together." The cargo ship's engines hummed softly as it made its way toward the outer colonies. James, Meera, and Rix had found themselves temporary sanctuary in the cargo hold, amidst crates and machinery. James periodically checked the ship's course on his handheld navigator, ensuring they were still on track to the fringe outpost known as Haven. Haven was a notorious refuge for those seeking anonymity, a melting pot of traders, miners, and others living on the edge of galactic law. As the ship approached its destination, James briefed Meera and Rix on what to expect. "Haven's not exactly friendly territory," James explained. "We'll need to keep our heads down and blend in. No one here cares about your past unless it brings trouble to their doorstep." Meera nodded, her eyes scanning the faces of the few crew members they encountered. She was learning quickly, the gravity of their situation evident in her cautious demeanor. As they disembarked, the bustling chaos of Haven enveloped them. The outpost was a sprawling mass of docking bays, markets, and makeshift housing, all built into a large asteroid. Neon lights flickered, advertising various goods and services, while a diverse crowd of species moved through the streets. James led the way to a nondescript inn known to provide discreet lodgings. The owner, an old acquaintance of James named Talia, greeted them with a nod of recognition and a wary glance at Meera. "Trouble follows you like a shadow, James," Talia remarked, leading them to a pair of rooms at the back of the inn. "Keep it quiet, keep it clean, and we'll have no problems." Once settled, James and Rix decided to gather information and supplies while Meera stayed behind. James stressed the importance of staying indoors, to which Meera agreed, though her sense of isolation was palpable. In the market, James and Rix split up to cover more ground. James headed to a local tech vendor to purchase some communication scramblers, while Rix explored options for off-grid medical supplies. As James haggled with the vendor, a grizzled human trader next to him leaned in, his voice low. "You're the one harboring that alien fugitive, aren't you? News travels fast, friend." James tensed, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. "Don't know what you're talking about," he muttered. The trader chuckled, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Relax, I'm not here to cause trouble. In fact, I might have some information that could be useful to you, but it'll cost you." After a moment's hesitation, James agreed to the deal, exchanging a few valuable gems for the information. "There's a bounty on your heads, yours and the girls. Word is, it's not just her people looking for her. Some powerful players in the shadows are interested too." Armed with this unsettling knowledge, James hurried back to meet Rix, who had also heard rumors of increasing interest in their whereabouts. Back at the inn, they found Meera sitting quietly by the window, watching the starlit sky. Her loneliness was a stark contrast to the bustling life outside. James sat next to her, his expression somber. "Meera, we've got some more challenges ahead. It seems we're not as hidden as we'd hoped. We need to stay one step ahead of those who are after you." Meera turned to him, her voice calm yet determined. "I knew this journey would not be easy, but I am ready to face whatever comes. You have given me hope, and for that, I am prepared to fight." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Rix peeked through the peephole, then opened it to reveal Talia, her face grave. "It's time you left, James." she said urgently. Your presence here is stirring unrest. I can give you till dawn, but after that, you're on your own. As night deepened, the three prepared for an early departure, their resolve hardened by the threats looming over them. Haven had offered a brief respite, but their journey was far from over. They would leave at first light, heading deeper into the fringes of known space, where perhaps they could find a moment's peace. Under the dim pre-dawn light of Haven, James, Meera, and Rix hastily packed their few belongings. The air was tense with the urgency of their departure, the gravity of Talia's warning weighing heavily on them. We need a new plan, Rix whispered as he double-checked their supplies. Staying on the move is one thing, but we need a more permanent solution. We can't keep running forever. James nodded, his mind racing through their options. First, we need a safer destination, somewhere off the grid. I know a guy, an old pilot from my academy days. He's been living on a remote station in the Zeta sector. It's a long shot, but it might be our best bet. As they stepped out into the chilly corridor of the inn, Meera pulled her cloak tighter around her. Despite the uncertainty of their situation, her resolve remained strong. Wherever we go, they will follow. We need allies, James, not just a hideout. James looked at her, her growth in understanding their predicament evident. You're right. Let's see what we can arrange before we leave Haven. Their first stop was the market, a bustling maze of stalls and vendors that was just beginning to stir with the morning rush. James led them to a discreet corner where a group of individuals known for their less-than-legal expertise congregated. Stay sharp, he murmured to Rix and Meera as they approached. James recognized a familiar face among the group, a burly man named Dakar who specialized in interstellar communications. Dakar, I need a favor, James began, cutting straight to the chase. Dakar, a man with a network as vast as his frame, eyed them warily. Depends on the favor, Holt. We need safe passage and allies. We've got heat, and not just any kind. It's the kind that scorches before you see the flame, James explained, glancing at Meera, who stood slightly behind him. Dakar's eyes narrowed, taking in Meera's alien features. She's the cause of your trouble? Meera stepped forward, her voice steady, projecting her thoughts into Dakar's mind. I am seeking freedom and safety from those who wish to harm me. Dakar grunted, impressed by her direct approach. I might know a few willing to stand up for a cause, especially one that sticks it to the big players in the galaxy, but it'll cost you more than just credits. What are you asking? James inquired, knowing the price could be high. Information. Whatever she knows about her people, their tech, their weaknesses. Anything that can give us an edge, Dakar replied. Meera looked at James, seeking reassurance. He nodded slightly, trusting her judgment. I agree, but on one condition, Meera stated. The information will be shared only if it helps secure our safety. Nothing that can be used to harm my people unjustly. Dakar smirked. Fair enough, I'll set up a meet. There are a few old rebels and outcasts who might just rally to your cause. Within the hour, Dakar had arranged a covert meeting in a derelict warehouse on the edge of Haven. The group that gathered was diverse, a mix of species and backgrounds, each with a reason to disdain the galactic powers that be. James introduced Meera, explaining her plight and their need for assistance. The tales of her survival and their fight resonated with the group, many of whom had faced persecution themselves. A grizzled pilot named Anka spoke up, her voice raspy but firm. I've been dodging the authorities for decades. What you're asking isn't new to us, but it's risky. What's in it for us if we help? Meera answered, her resolve clear. An alliance, protection, a shared stand against those who exploit and oppress, and my knowledge, which could benefit us all. After intense discussions and negotiations, the group formed a tentative alliance. Their resources were limited, but together they were a formidable force. Plans were made, routes were mapped, and promises exchanged. As the meeting dispersed, James felt a cautious hope rising. They were no longer alone. They had allies who believed in their cause. As dawn broke over Haven, they prepared to leave, not just as fugitives, but as leaders of a new coalition. Let's move out, James said, a determined glint in his eye. We've got a long journey ahead, and it starts now. After departing Haven, James, Meera, and their new allies, now a motley crew aboard the battered freighter Aegis, set course for a remote sector known only to a few trusted pilots. The plan was to regroup at an undisclosed asteroid base, using it as a temporary haven and a strategic point for their next moves. As Aegis navigated through the lesser-known hyperlanes, Rix and Anka, the grizzled pilot, pored over star maps and communications, ensuring their path remained untraceable. Meanwhile, Meera and James prepared for potential encounters, discussing contingency plans and rallying their small but determined group. "We need to stay alert," James warned, addressing the crew in the cramped common area of the freighter. "Our adversaries have resources and motivation. We must be prepared for anything." Their caution proved necessary sooner than expected. As Aegis approached a seemingly innocuous asteroid field, the ship's sensors picked up fast-approaching signals, too fast to be mere space debris. "It's an ambush!" Rick shouted, rushing to the cockpit. Anka was already at the helm, her hands flying over the controls as she executed evasive maneuvers. Outside, the dark void of space was suddenly alive with the glow of engine thrusters and weapon discharges. A squadron of sleek, unidentified fighters had them in their sights, their origins unclear, but their intentions decidedly hostile. "Defensive positions," James ordered. The crew, though not soldiers, had been briefed on basic combat and survival strategies. They scrambled, some to weapon stations, others to secure essential systems in Meera. Meera, however, was not one to stand back. Her unique abilities, once the cause of her exile, could now be their greatest asset. "I can help," she insisted, her eyes glowing with an ethereal light as she concentrated. The bioluminescent markings on her skin pulsed rhythmically. James hesitated but nodded, trusting her judgment. "Do what you can, Meera." As Aegis twisted and turned through the asteroid field, Meera extended her hands, her focus intensifying. A visible wave of energy emanated from her, distorting the space around the ship. The pursuing fighters struggled as their targeting systems became erratic, their shots veering off into the void. Anka cheered, taking advantage of the confusion. "That's our cue. Hold on." She piloted the ship deeper into the asteroid field, using the larger rocks as cover. The ambushers, unprepared for their quarry's resilience and Meera's abilities, regrouped, trying to recalibrate their attack. But James and his crew were not about to wait for the next strike. "Rix, fire up the secondary engines. We're making a break for it," James commanded, his voice calm but firm. With a powerful surge, Aegis blasted away from the asteroid field, its engines glowing hot. Behind them, the confused attackers made a reluctant pursuit, but the dense field and their disrupted systems hindered their progress. Once clear of immediate danger, the crew of Aegis breathed a collective sigh of relief. James turned to Meera, admiration and gratitude evident in his expression. "That was incredible, Meera. You saved us." Meera smiled, her fatigue hidden behind a mask of determination. "We saved each other. This is what allies do." The attack had been thwarted, but it was a stark reminder of the dangers they faced. Whoever was after Meera was persistent and possibly well-informed of their movements. "We need to keep moving," Anka stated, reviewing the ship's status. "Those fighters will report back, and next time they might send a bigger force." James nodded in agreement. "We'll head to the rendezvous point and plan our next move. This fight isn't over, but today we've won a significant battle." As Aegis continued its journey, the sense of camaraderie among the crew deepened. They were diverse in origin and background, but they shared a common cause, protecting one of their own against overwhelming odds. The road ahead was uncertain, but their resolve was stronger than ever. The freighter Aegis had been on the run for weeks, ducking in and out of shadowy corners of the galaxy, narrowly evading the relentless forces pursuing Meera and her protectors. With each close call, the crew's determination hardened and their camaraderie deepened. However, the continuous threat wore on them, and it was clear they needed a decisive plan to end their plight. In the dimly lit strategy room of the Aegis, James and his allies gathered around a holographic map, plotting their next move. Meera, now more confident in her role within the group, proposed a daring idea. "We can't keep running forever," she stated, her voice steady. "We need to confront them, but on our terms, in a place of our choosing." Rix nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the star charts. "There's a derelict space station in the Noctis Nebula. It's been abandoned for years, cloaked by the nebula's dense gases. It could provide the cover and strategic advantage we need." Anka chimed in, her tone serious. "It's risky. The nebula could interfere with our systems, and theirs too. It evens the playing field." James considered the plan, weighing the risks against their dwindling options. "It's settled then. We'll make our stand at the Noctis Nebula. Prepare the ship and make sure everyone knows their part." As Aegis set its course toward the nebula, James pulled Meera aside. "This could get dangerous," he cautioned, his concern evident. "You've become important to all of us. I want you to stay safe. Meera placed a reassuring hand on his arm. I will be careful, but I must fight alongside you. This is my battle too, James. Arriving at the Noctis Nebula, the Aegis maneuvered into the shadow of the abandoned station, its hull barely visible against the backdrop of swirling gas clouds. The crew readied their weapons and systems, setting traps and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Soon, sensors picked up incoming ships, sleek, aggressive fighters, flanked by a heavily armed cruiser. The hunters had become the hunted, though they were likely unaware of the trap they were sailing into. As the enemy fleet approached, Rix initiated the first phase of their plan, deploying a series of mines that exploded in brilliant flares, disorienting the attackers and damaging several fighters. Now! James commanded, and Meera focused her energy, extending her arms towards the enemy cruiser. A wave of pulsating energy surged from her, distorting the space around the advancing ships, their systems flickering under the strain of her power. The Aegis and its small fleet of allied ships then launched their counterattack, firing from positions of cover provided by the station's skeleton. The battle was fierce, with beams of energy crisscrossing the nebula, illuminating the gas clouds in eerie, dancing lights. Amid the chaos, a small boarding party led by James and Meera made their way to the enemy cruiser, fighting through corridors to reach the ship's bridge. There, they confronted the enemy commander, a mercenary known only as Corvin, who had been relentless in his pursuit. "You don't know what you're dealing with," Corvin sneered, his hand on the ship's self-destruct button. "She's too dangerous to be left alive." James faced him squarely, his weapon aimed. "She's not a weapon. She's an ally, and she's under our protection." Meera stepped forward, her presence commanding. "I am not your enemy, but I will defend my freedom and my friends." A tense standoff ensued, each second stretching long and thin. Finally, Corvin's resolve faltered, and he backed away, realizing the futility of his mission against their united front. With the cruiser secured and the remaining enemy fighters retreating, James and his allies returned to the Aegis, victorious but weary. They had won the battle, ensuring their safety for now, and possibly shifting the balance of power in their favor. As they set a course away from the nebula, Meera looked out at the stars, her future uncertain, but her spirit unbroken. "Together we can face anything," she said, a slight smile touching her lips. James nodded, looking at the faces of his crew, each one marked by battle but resolute. "Yes, we can, and we will." After the decisive battle in the Noctis Nebula, the crew of the Aegis sailed through space with a newfound sense of security. Their victory had earned them a brief respite from pursuit, and James used this time to seek a permanent solution to Meera's safety and the ongoing threats they faced. James, Meera, and Rix gathered in the strategy room, where a holographic display of a remote, lushly verdant planet spun slowly. Rix pointed to the display, his tone optimistic. "This is Elara the Four, largely uncharted and outside the central jurisdiction. It's perfect for a new start." Meera leaned closer, her eyes reflecting the green swirls of the planet below. "It looks peaceful," she said, a hint of longing in her voice. "It's more than that," James added. "It's a chance for us to build something. A place where you can be safe, where we can all be safe from the politics and power plays of the galaxy." The decision was unanimous. As the Aegis approached Elara 4, the crew's spirits lifted. The planet, with its thick forests and vast oceans, promised a sanctuary that seemed a world away from the cold metal and endless void of space. Upon landing, they found the environment welcoming, the air fresh and filled with the scents of flora and fauna. The first few weeks were spent building a basic settlement, a compound using materials salvaged from the Aegis and harvested from the local resources. Meera, who had never known a home, worked tirelessly alongside the others, her abilities aiding in the construction and shaping of their new environment. As the settlement grew, so did their hope for a peaceful life. One evening, as the sun set over the verdant landscape, the crew gathered around a newly ignited fire, the flames casting warm glows on their faces. James looked around at the group, his heart full. "We've been through a lot together," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "From running scared to standing our ground. Now we're not just survivors. We're founders of a new home." Meera took her place beside James, her gaze sweeping over the faces of their small community. "I never imagined such a life could be possible," she said, her voice resonant and clear. "Here I feel truly free. Thank you for believing in me, for fighting with me." Rix, ever the pragmatist, chimed in with a grin. "Well, We're going to need some ground rules if we're going to make this work. First rule, everyone pulls their weight. Laughter filled the air, light and genuine, as they began to discuss the future of their community. They talked about creating a council, about ways to make the settlement sustainable, and about possible protections against any future threats. As the meeting wound down, James walked with Meera to the edge of their settlement, looking out over a field leading to a dense forest. "What will you do now, Meera?" he asked, genuinely curious about her plans. Meera's eyes were thoughtful as she watched the stars begin to pepper the night sky. "I want to explore everything this planet has to offer, and I want to help protect this place, not just for us, but for anyone else who might need sanctuary." James nodded, understanding her need to give back the safety and support she had been given. "Then let's make sure this place becomes a beacon for all who seek peace." The night deepened, and as they returned to the fire, the first of many nights on Alara 4, there was a palpable sense of accomplishment and anticipation. Together, they had not only escaped the shadows that chased them, but had also stepped into the light of a new beginning, crafting a future that once seemed an impossible dream.